Elspeth plunged down the Lacuna tunnel, clinging to a cart controlled by Mirrans, if you could even call it control without gravity. She cracked her eyes open to see pools of green glowing necrogen. If you breathed their fumes too long, it would rot you from the inside out. This was Phyrexia. It changes what it can and kills what it can't. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Ether Hub. I'm Simon, bringing you more Magic the Gathering lore. Today we continue the Phyrexia All Will Be One story with Chapter 3. In the previous chapter, we found the Planeswalker strike team had been scattered thanks to a barrier placed over the world by Elesh Norn. They fight to regroup so that they can continue with the mission. Still, some among them are missing, while others have already been injured and even corrupted by glistening oil. Still, they push forward, deeper towards New Phyrexia's center to destroy their weapon against the multiverse. Before we begin, if you're enjoying these videos, guys, make sure to show your support by leaving this video a like, becoming a subscriber, and of course, sharing it with your friends. Now let's continue with Phyrexia All Will Be One Chapter 3, Inconceivable Losses, written by Seanan McGuire. Other carts were ahead of Elspeth's, gathering gear and disembarking. Kott's demolition team was scouting a safe path through the toxic pools to the Fair Basilica, where Elesh Norn controlled New Phyrexia. They were joined by Nahiri, Jace, and Kaya, the last of which had phased her lower legs into translucency to avoid the necrogen. A smart tactic, if only everyone else was so lucky. They would use the chaos of the Dross Pits to sneak past the 7 Steel Thanes. Powerful Phyrexians in their own right, fought for universal power over the sphere, rarely ever uniting. The black-aligned Praetor, Sheoldred, had come out on top, but no one ever expected her rule to last that long. Sheoldred had in fact aligned with the red Praetor Vraska against Elesh Norn, along with other Thanes, such as Roxith, the Thane of Rot, Geth, the Lord of the Vault, and Vran, Thane of Blood. Geth, who went under a new title, Lord of Contracts, had unfortunately already been killed by Elesh Norn's minions, the voice of the Praetors, Atraxa, and her daughter, Ixhale. The remaining 3 not making up this warband against Elesh Norn were likely to be distracted in their efforts to grab territory and power, expecting the other Thanes to betray them, so they wouldn't pose much of a threat to this mission. Kaido arrived in a cart with Tyvar, one wishing to sneak through the sphere overlooked, and the other unable to fathom the desire to ever be overlooked. Elspeth passed around bottles of Halo that would protect them from the necrogen fumes, at least for a little while. After swallowing the Halo, Jace dropped the bottle, gasping for breath. He began to twitch. His pulse was going haywire. Halo couldn't hurt people, and this wasn't Phyresis, but Jace was clearly in pain. Jace leapt from his cart, attempting to take off across the deadly landscape. Tyvar caught him by the arm as he began to murmur. The Halo actually cleared his head, and now he heard Vraska calling for help. Vraska, the Gorgon Planeswalker assassin and the guildmaster of the Golgari Swarm on the plane of Ravnica. She was everything to Jace. He wanted to go to her, he needed to go to her, and promised, telepathically, that they would meet up with the rest of the Resistance later. It was rash. Jace had the Silex, and as he ran off, the rest of the Planeswalkers abandoned their plans and ran after him. They saw warring figures, blackened metal shells of the Dross Pit inhabitants, fighting against Vraska's molten minions. Luckily, the red-aligned Praetor was firmly on their side. As they ran past undetected, Elspeth realized that Jace was protecting them, using a spell to make them invisible to the battling Phyrexians. Looming ahead was the decay of Sheoldred's Colosseum, where Phyrexians, or those deemed unworthy of perfection, were forced to fight. It was a monument to their tyranny. As they ran through the Colosseum gates, Kaido suggested to Elspeth that they should take the Silex and leave Jace to his rescue mission. Elspeth, however, wouldn't do it. What was the point of fighting if they couldn't even make an effort to save one of their own? Inside the Colosseum was a vast black floor with a giant bubbling Dross Pit in the middle, surrounded by rows of chairs so steep that spectators could easily tumble from it if they weren't careful. Standing in the middle was Vraska, afflicted with hundreds of bleeding wounds, surrounded by Phyrexians. The rest of the area was littered with dead Mirrans and petrified Phyrexian bodies. Clearly, Vraska fought hard, using her glaring vision to defeat many opponents. They all drew their weapons and shouted, "For Mirrodin!" charging in to save Vraska. Jace was still veiled by his magic, but the Phyrexians turned to fight the other Planeswalkers. Tyvar rushed in to help Kaido block an attacking Phyrexian, whose sword crunched into the elf's metal-plated back. Kaido used telekinesis to peel the glistening oil left on Tyvar's skin and throw a ball of the oil at the Phyrexian's eyes, blinding it just long enough for Tyvar to land a fatal blow. Koth had fought in this Coliseum before, alone, but now he was with friends. He and Elspeth attacked a crustacean-like Phyrexian, cutting off a claw and flinging it at the line of enemies that advanced. Nahiri was a true dealer of destruction, a cloud of molten, whirling knives. The Phyrexians were hardly a match for her. Jace reached Vraska, but she raised a hand to ward him off. Jace told her that Elspeth was here with Halo, a magical substance from her home world that could possibly protect them. And so was Melira, who could even outright cure Phyrexia. It wasn't nearly as bad as she thought. Vraska declines. She didn't mean to call Jace to her, but they were mentally linked, and in her pain, she let her emotions make that terrible decision. Jace willed that Vraska understood that she was saved. Vraska told him she wasn't saved at all. The poison was already inside her, and she could no longer fight it off. It was too late. Nahiri and her cloud of knives moved forward, dispassionately offering to end Vraska when she was still mentally herself. Better to die as a Planeswalker than to be killed as a Phyrexian. Jace spat a threat at Nahiri. They had to at least try to save her. Vraska told them to run. She told Jace that she loved him, and not to let their love be the thing that destroys him. She wanted them to save the multiverse and live. That would make her happy. Jace wouldn't leave her, but the others would. He couldn't believe they were giving up on her. He couldn't let Vraska die, at least die alone. Jace and Vraska were lost in their own world, not noticing the other Planeswalkers leaving. The others ran out of the Coliseum, emerging in the middle of a war. Without Jace, there was nothing concealing them from the ranks of Phyrexians outside the Coliseum walls. They were exhausted from their fight to get to Vraska, but they couldn't press forward without clearing the field. Elspeth reached for Koth's hand and squeezed his fingers. They had done everything they could. They might fail right here, but they had indeed tried. "For Mirrodin?" she asked. Koth echoed her with a roar, and the Planeswalkers surged forward. Jace took Vraska's hand and asked her to close her eyes. When she opened them, the Coliseum was gone. They were on the streets of Ravnica, the plane where they met, dressed for an afternoon stroll. If Jace couldn't save her from Phyrexia, he would spend one more day with her. She could almost believe his wonderful illusion as they wandered the streets of the city. This was his dream of their future together, had the multiverse and fate only been a little kinder. Vraska thanked Jace, but told him it was time to go before she was totally completed and tried to attack. Jace always needed to be the hero who finds the answer, but sometimes there just isn't one. They moved close, sharing one last kiss in the shadow of the end. In that moment, Vraska stabbed Jace in the palm, and his illusion shattered around them. Vraska smiled, holding him as he tried to pull away. "For the glory of Phyrexia," she hissed. Vraska had stabbed Jace with a long, curving scorpion tail, delivering a dose of glistening oil. She unleashed her gaze, her true gaze, upon him for the first time. Jace covering his face with his burning arm, running away. Vraska's laugh haunted him as he ran through the gates, meeting the other Planeswalkers in battle. Nahiri was fighting fiercely, her bandage ripped free, exposing a bony protrusion from the back of her neck. Her own corruption thanks to Phyrexia. Her magic rose like a burning tide, seemingly inexhaustible, relentless, as she dropped her floating knives. Instead, her sword glowed brighter, and the Coliseum began to warp and crack. The bony growth on her neck began to spread, revealing veins of deep, burning red where blood should have been. Her eyes turned black as she told Jace to finish the job. Her sacrifice here can't be for nothing. In that moment, she was a figure of legend. In that moment, she cleaved New Phyrexia. There was a vast, terrible shattering, and everything fell into darkness. Dust clogged the air, and Elspeth pushed a large piece of debris off her torso and began to look for the others. The impact had smashed her pack, shattering their remaining bottles of Halo. Koth pushed himself up from the rubble and looked up into the sky. There was a vast hole, dark against the silver atmosphere, like someone had smashed their way through. Nahiri had dropped the entire Colosseum into the fair basilica. The others were picking their way out of the rubble. They had survived along with the Silex. Phyrexians began to pour from the hole, not falling, but clinging to the silver surface of the sky. The Phyrexians of the fair basilica, caked in red sinew and white porcelain, climbed up the hollow metallic walls to meet Urabrask's forces. Then, right against the horizon, flew the Phyrexian angel Atraxa. Jace showed his friends the wound Vraska had given him, but Melira couldn't heal him here where it was so dangerous. That process could take several days, and they were far too vulnerable to do it now. The halo in his system would slow the oil, but it wouldn't stop it. They had to make their way toward Elesh Norn's altar, so that they could accomplish their mission. The loss of Vraska and his own future seemed to have broken Jace, and Elspeth couldn't stand to look at him like that for very long. They were trapped here in the heart of New Phyrexia. They had lost 3 in total if you counted Jace, along with the Halo. How much did they have left to lose? Wow, and that, guys, was Chapter 3 of Phyrexia All Will Be One story. This was a gut punch of an episode, with Nahiri infected. She did as she promised in the last chapter and went all out. Her character has gone through some rocky points, from a young aspiring hero to a rogue anti-hero to a downright villain. But her image can be slightly repaired by her actions here on New Phyrexia, using all her might, sacrificing herself so that her allies could continue the mission. Even Jace, who had butted heads with Nahiri, just couldn't believe that she was the one to save them. Speaking of Jace, he too looks willing to sacrifice himself. Someone needs to set off the Silex, and he's been mortally wounded by his former love, Vraska. With Vraska completed and himself infected, the hope and love for life has drained from his eyes. But this isn't all sad news, guys. If Jace is completed, well, that's another prediction I got right. Silver linings. Anyway, that's going to do it for today's video, guys. Remember, you can catch all of my videos on All Will Be One story linked in a playlist in the description below. If you enjoy our videos, make sure you leave them a like, become a subscriber, and of course, share it with your friends. As always, thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, see ya!